So, hello, my name is Tori Drayton. I am a second year at the University of Windsor, in which I am studying criminology and family and social relations. So today we'll be talking about some very specific research that I'm very excited to broadcast and display, as it is becoming increasingly important in our environment and our society. So to begin, we'll be looking at kind of just some more details regarding this and the area, and more details regarding the women. So today we'll be looking specifically at the double victimization of criminalized women in neoliberal contexts. So specifically, we will look how women can often be treated poorly based on specific characteristics such as low household income, low education levels, housing insecurities, poverty rates, maternal instincts, things like that, that can be connected with a very marginalized state of violence that bases itself on a neoliberal governmentality. Specifically, this will be in the area of Paraguay, where we will look at women incarcerated and how that affects how they were and how they lived beforehand. So due to the overwhelming amount of bias regarding criminality in females, compared with its state violence against marginalized women, it becomes a pattern for society, for this particular neoliberal government, to create a very unequal society for women. So although it is now a liberal democracy after its emergence from a brutal authoritarian regime in 1989, it is now kind of going into more freedom-based with low government funding. However, with this, women are the only gender that experiences the loss of freedom if they are unable to sustain their life for itself. With this being said, we should look at how these women who are unable to sustain themselves are being treated and double victimized once going into incarceration. So before we get into the actual research, we're just going to look at a little bit of existing literature. Paraguay economy was not doing well at the time and is still not, with a poverty rate of 24.2% and low employment rates reaching 7.2% and 6.9%. That is a very low income area in which people are not working or making money. With this being said, these workers are not actually being treated fairly either, as it is often displayed that 64% of informed workers cannot contribute to Social Security. They have no safety precautions, receive no health benefits, and are not even taxpayers or considered under the state. While going to education, education also seems to be very unequal in Paraguay society, as it's commonly known as one of the lowest on the educational scale. Low enrollment rates for 15 to 17-year-olds are over 64% are uneducated. However, girls are more researched to be undereducated than boys, as they're often due to poor girls being given up to be servants rather than learning. A lot of it was based on household duties rather than education at that point in life. So the Paraguay society, so democratic ideologies mainly revolve around global markets and a fully transparent government. While Paraguay has now had increasing numbers of international export and domestic inequality, incarceration rates have increased. And incarceration rates have increased especially with women, as these inmates are turning out to be more and more vulnerable as the days go on. So a research question at stake. We're going to look at 3 specific factors and imperfections in society that can equally connect to each other to play out a very specific part in this specific question. We're going to look at female inequalities between men and women, specific cultural areas, so that's specifically Paraguay, and general biases based on characteristics of women, so their housing insecurities, their poverty level, their income level, their education level, things like that. So this specific research tends to understand the need to understand the relationship between these 3 factors, specifically with women in the Paraguay prisons. So are women specifically incarcerated in Paraguay experiencing these neoliberal state violence, making them more increasingly vulnerable? So due to these characteristics, do these specific women suffer from more violence in Paraguay's prisons, if not already being victimized based on maternal status, poverty, or housing arrangements? So our data and methods, we chose to do a mixed methodology, which is a mix between qualitative and quantitative data to ensure all types of data is being recorded. We want the most reliable and the most information at once. So we decided to interview inmates of an all-women prison located in Paraguay. This information represents 96.5% of the full population of those incarcerated. So our quantitative data sees how incarcerated women are treated in prisons, while we use census surveys to give us information regarding demographic data. This will be things such as racial class, linguistic background, occupation, education, date of charge arrest, and sentence date. So what we did was we took the 813 female prisoners dispensed across these 9 institutions and tried to create the most reliable generalization for how they're being treated. We also used qualitative data, which we auto-recorded these participants. We auto-recorded their interviews and recorded basically their true feelings and their true experiences within incarceration based on socio-demographic specific rates, so family history, economic, occupational position, criminal history, incarceration experiences, things like that, based on their violence. So our findings were shocking to us, but also made a clear connection between our double victimization ideas, that most crimes were against a person, while a small percentage were charged or convicted of property crimes or disturbing the peace. So most of these women being incarcerated, most of them were directly towards one person, not anything else. So under education and literacy, so we saw such a low number of incarcerated women in prison being uneducated, being educated and literate. So mostly were illiterate female prisons. So we actually found that 84% were illiterate. While again, women described their childhood meaning more so household duties rather than learning. And these poor women became more likely to leave school due to personal reasons in which they had actually no other alternative. So they would leave to make money, but they would also leave because they possibly got pregnant at a young age. They had a bad family background. They got into the sex trade. They got into the drug ring, things like that. Their family background was also shocking, as over 87% of women incarcerated had children. These children were commonly born in the women's adolescence, but these relationships were said to be filled with emotional and physical abuse inside of the family, as well as also having lots of drugs involved. However, many of these births were not recognized by state, which also shows the inequality and careless attention given by the state and the governmentality, again connecting those neoliberal governmentality with the family background. At a poverty rate, we found that many people incarcerated had a much lower income level, while many were unemployed. 14% were fully unemployed with no income level, and those who did work actually made 20% less than the average citizen in their area. Wages were much lower, and many people became more involved in dangerous activities such as drug rings, sex trades to make money. Housing insecurities, so a very low amount of inmates actually experienced having shelter. 43%, only 43%, had lived in shelter their entire lives, while many had to experience childhood shelters or unsafe atmospheres due to this. So our last question had to do with violence in prison. So many felt emotional and physical pain in prison and felt this altered the way in which people perceived their time. Those who came from low poverty, low income levels, low housing or no housing, often got brutal attacks or experienced more violence than those who did not. Many inmates did experience violence. Over 1 in 3 people were abused during their arrest. And gendered violence, so sexual assault towards women, happened continuously throughout their time, actually in jail. So this would happen by police themselves, guards, whoever was able access to them. So as we conclude, this research aimed to decide and see if the feminization of criminality connected with the state of violence. And if that happened, then we can say that it is a strong characteristic of neoliberal governmentality, which we can conclude and connect to each other. So in specific, women in Paraguay prisons were interviewed to understand the overall conditions of prison and their characteristics of how they lived beforehand and how they were double marginalized. In conclusion, this main hypothesis in question has been proven to be true, that vulnerable women in Paraguay who already have been victimized through housing insecurities, material instincts, poverty, and lower education levels have experienced a double victimization within the jail as its marginalization from the state grew larger. So possible discussion for the future, as we see this grow in society, people must pay more attention to what is actually going on in order to stop it. Although government seems to be putting some public housing, this seems to strongly resemble prison. This needs to be stopped. There needs to be specific things made in order to stop this, so people can get out of that route, start making money, start being educated. So things like social programs that can really increase certain rates of social and economic inclusion, or reduce crime rates and keep females from being double victimized. This is such a serious part in society and needs to be looked at and needs to be researched more to understand and stop what is going on. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day.